All right, while folks continue to join, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I'm Elsa Roberts. Most of you, I think, met me during the meet and greet last month. I'm so pleased that you could join me today for our first class on digital strategy fundraising fundamentals. Today, we're going to be going over a few different things, including the syllabus and some housekeeping to orient everyone. Here's the basics of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to be reviewing the syllabus. We're going to be talking to digital fundraising. And hold on a second, I'm going to actually mute everybody really quick. Okay, so I've muted everyone, but you'll be able to unmute yourself during discussion sections. And if you have a question at any point, please just use the hand raise function and unmute yourself. Okay, the other things that we'll be reviewing today are the key elements of a digital fundraising strategy, and then you'll have in-class time to work on your strategic plan outline. This is a virtual class, and I want to emphasize this is a class, not a webinar. So treat this like a virtual classroom environment. There will be small group work, time for you to work on your homework in class, just like you would expect in a traditional college classroom. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at our syllabus here. So this is my contact information. You can also, of course, reach out to Jordan. Jordan, do you want to pop on and say hi really quick? Maybe not. Jordan's on here. You've all met Jordan. You can ask Jordan or Jessica questions as well. And me, you can email any of us with any questions that you have. Our class will meet every second Tuesday through August. So that's today, July 11th, and then August 8th. And we will meet from 9 to 11 a.m. Mountain Time. The Zoom registration link is here. And it's also, some of you may have also received a calendar invitation from me that I sent out just so that you would have that locked into your calendar as well. The registration link is in that invite as well. There are also going to be office hours every week on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. And the Zoom link is right there. There's no registration necessary for office hours. That's just an open link. You can join or not. Office hours are optional, though, of course, I encourage you to attend office hours if you have questions or want to work through any kind of specific things that you have going on with your organization or, or specifically with your homework. This is the course description. I will not read it to you. These are the course requirements. I will briefly go over those but I know Jordan has also reviewed all of this with you as well in prior emails. The biggest thing about that, in terms of course requirements is attending each class. We only have 3 sessions together, so it's really important to be present because each class builds on the next, as well as the homework. Everything is sort of structured to layer on top of each other so that you get as much value as you can out of this and you're not doing kind of disparate tasks, but everything is sort of culminating. There's 2 major assignments for the class. There's a strategic plan and a campaign plan. The strategic plan is an overarching plan that is focused around your digital strategy for fundraising, not a specific campaign. So that's like looking at more like a bird's eye view at all of planning out sort of at a high level, not just your activities, but sort of like your general approach, who your audiences are, what your message thrust is, how you plan to plug into the different activities into the different levels of the donor pathway. Oh, Jordan I just see your message, Jordan. You can go ahead and jump in now if you would like.
Hey, this is Jordan. I'll just say a quick thing up at the top and then let you roll on through. I'm really excited that everybody is able to join today. This is the first of 3 classes, all of which attendance is required. So thank you guys for being here and dedicating some time to this course. Just a quick couple of housekeeping items and reminders from the Colorado Gives side of things. For those of you who have access to the advanced features, make sure that you are setting up demo meetings to help and leaning on the support of the Mighty Cause team to leverage the different features within the advanced features offering. Also a reminder that every person at your organization can log in and have access to Catchafire. Catchafire is the platform that matches you with skilled volunteers so you can execute on, of course, these digital fundraising aspects, but also any other projects or supporting programs that you'd like to leverage the Catchafire platform for. So just a quick reminder there. And lastly, just thank you all for your dedication and your spirit of philanthropy. We're here to help you guys grow and to celebrate all the wonderful Colorado organizations. So thank you, Elsa and Firefly Partner team. And I will stop talking now. If you need anything, you know how to contact me directly. And Elsa is also available as well.
Thanks, Jordan. All right. So I was talking about major assignments. So for the strategic plan, the outline is what you'll be working on today in class. And it's due at the end of class, but you're not actually submitting something. It's more that you're going to be working on it and have it mostly fleshed out, the outline, by end of class today. And then the final strategic plan is due on August 8th at the end of the 3rd class. The campaign plan, that's where you'll actually be putting together a strategic plan for a specific campaign. In this case, it's going to be Colorado Gives Day. And you'll start that outline in our 3rd and final class together and get that fleshed out there. And then you'll turn in the final plan after the last class is over on September 12th. Just like, kind of like you would if you were in college and you had a final paper and you turn it in at the end after classes are over. And I will be providing, pardon me, feedback on there, like thoughts and, and comments and things like that. These are not graded. These are about, imagine me as more of like a collaborator with you. So like, as I'm reading your plans, I'm looking to make suggestions for how you could add to that plan or some additional considerations that you might want to bring into the plan. So my goal with feedback on these plans is to help you develop them further so that they are as useful to you as they possibly can be. For submissions, you'll submit all of these into the assignments folder that's in Google Drive. You have a link to the Google Drive folder, which is going to contain all of your assignments and other course information, including support material resources. That link is also in the calendar invitation that I sent out this week. When you do submit your final plans, for your assignments, please make sure that it is a doc or a docx or a Google Doc file so that I can actually make edits and comments in it within the tool. Also, when you're naming the file, please include your full name and the title of the assignment so it's easy for me to know whose work I'm looking at. And again, the assignments folder is linked here, and then the support materials folder is linked here. And we'll be adding in support materials for each lesson. Support materials for this month, for this lesson, are already loaded into that folder. That includes the donor pathway handout, as well as an example strategic fundraising plan and a strategic fundraising plan outline that you can use as a resource. The strategic fundraising too many words. The strategic fundraising plan outline is an editable document. So please make a copy for yourself, and you can then use that to flesh out your outline. And as Jordan has already mentioned, you have access to Catchafire and specific bundles that they've created to complement the work that you're doing as a cohort. So please lean on that resource. They're a great organization, and it's an excellent resource for you to have when you don't have enough staff, perhaps, or time to execute on all of the aspects of a fundraising campaign that you would like to, or if you want to have additional calls with someone who's a fundraising expert and you have specific questions about digital fundraising strategy. We also, in addition to office hours, you also will have the ability to schedule a one-on-one consult with me, either during this course or during the second course that'll happen in the spring. This is a link to my calendar where you can schedule that consult. You can schedule it at any time after this month. So whenever is convenient for you, you can go ahead and block an hour on my calendar to have a focused conversation. If you have a question that is like very specific to, say, a fundraising technology or tool, I may please let me know in advance, because I may bring on a specialist from the Firefly team that can better help to address like specifics that I may not have specialized knowledge in. Okay, just need to make sure that I've covered all my bases here. Summers. Oh yes, for office hours, they are weekly on Wednesdays, but I did want to note that next week I will not be holding office hours as I am out of town. And then the week of July 12th, I will also not have an office hour that week either. However, there will be office hours extended through September after the class ends, so that if you need support or have questions as you're working on your campaign plan, you'll have the ability to come to office hours and ask those questions or have some hands-on review time. All right, I'm going to pause there before I go on. Does anyone have any questions so far? And remember to unmute yourself if you do have a question. Okay. Well, let's see. I see something in chat. Where can we find these resources? All of these items are in the Google Drive folder. You would have received a link to that from Jordan. Oh, and Jordan just dropped it in again. Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate that. So the syllabus is there, is there, as well as all of the resources. And in fact, I will go ahead and just go over this really quickly. Let me just pull this up so you can see. My nemesis sometimes. All right. Yep. Can't type this morning. There we go. All right, so you will see, you should have access to this folder. So you'll see the level up syllabus here, support materials are here, homework assignments are here. So both homework assignments are already uploaded for you to be able to review. All the assignment details are within there, but of course, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to answer all of those. This is where you'll upload your assignments into this folder. And then in terms of support materials, they're organized by lesson. As you can see, lesson 1 support materials are already available to you. And lesson 2 materials will be populated later this month. Are these folders for us only or for the whole class? So the assignment folders are, anyone can see what is in here. Yeah, it's not private. You'll also be doing peer review and co-working together too. So you'll be sharing your work with a classmate throughout the course as well. And we'll get to that a little bit more in more detail, but I've actually created peer pairs already for y'all so that you have a buddy to work with throughout this class as you're working on your assignment. All right, any questions Any other questions? Okay. So next up is getting into the donor pathway, which is commonly called the marketing funnel. Let's see, I've already reviewed this. I sort of double included information in here for myself. Okay, so want to get into the marketing funnel. This is sort of where you will orient yourself in the way that you plan and approach your digital strategy. Most of you probably heard of a marketing funnel. When I refer to the donor pathway, I've adapted this to be specific for nonprofit fundraising needs, which are distinct from traditional marketing efforts. But this is what a simplified nonprofit marketing funnel might look like. You have what's called the top of the funnel, where you attract, it's called attracting leads. And then after that, you acquire those leads, you nurture those leads, and you convert those leads. And what that means at a high level, when someone says top of the funnel, this is trying to reach folks who are not aware of your organization, haven't really interacted with you before, and you want to bring in new people, develop a broader awareness of your organization. And the goal of that is to get them to be, more involved with your organization, to hopefully become donors or become volunteers. You may have a variety of goals for that initial outreach, although we'll be focusing, obviously primarily on donor engagement and converting folks to be donors. The second step in this simplified funnel is acquiring new leads. And so what that means is building out your list. So you've reached some new people, they visited your site a few times, they've interacted with you maybe at an event. And now some of those people have signed up for your email list. That's sort of that second step where you've got them in the door. What do you do with them next? That's the nurture phase, where you really start to encourage that deeper engagement and develop a sense of loyalty in them. And you do that through consistent communication that is impactful and resonates with that particular audience. And then eventually you want to convert those leads. You want them to take a further action. You either want them to become a donor, you want them to volunteer, you want them to engage at a stronger level with your organization. This is the nonprofit donor pathway. And this is a version of the marketing funnel that is very much specific to the pathway of folks that you want to cultivate to become donors. So the first step is kind of the same. You go through attract, acquire, nurture, and convert. And your audience at that point are prospects, people who haven't made the commitment to donate yet, but will. Convert is when they go from a prospect to a donor. And at that point, your goal becomes to retain those folks, to keep them as donors, and then to cultivate them. And to cultivate is not only to engage them, but also to ensure that they are hopefully over time increasing their level of giving and increasing the level of engagement with the organization. And the reason that I have this sort of feedback symbol here is that these two areas, you're kind of going back and forth. You're engaging in retention and cultivation efforts kind of on an ongoing basis with the folks that you have brought into your fold as donors. Has anyone used a marketing funnel in the past or currently as a means of planning your own work and thinking through the way that you engage with donors? And please feel free to go off to speak. You can use comments if you want, but you can also unmute yourself and talk too. Right. Looks like most of you first time. Does this make sense to you so far as a process, as a way of approaching this?
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah.
And maybe this is just getting a bit ahead of you. And so if so, feel free just to dial me back. I would love to, I've seen this before. I'm newer in my role, and so I've never had the opportunity to see it in actuality. I've just seen it talked about theoretically. Do you
Mhm.
have any examples of what each of these steps might look like?
Yes, I do. And that's a great question. And actually Jordan was the one who asked me to say, like, this is really abstract. Can you provide a specific example of what this might look like? And I won't go into too much detail on this slide, because I actually do want to get into the example, but this is just defining what these different stages are. And this is also a resource that is in your Google Drive folder so that you can reference this after the class as well. Oh, and I see someone commenting, Heather, saying, we just never have had the time to come up with a plan or be intentional about it. Yeah, I feel your pain there. Before I went over to the agency side of life, I worked in nonprofit for about 10 years, both in communications and fundraising. And so it is a challenge to find the time to approach these things with anything more than like, we have so much to do. And not enough time in the day to do it. So let's go ahead and get into like an example. So here is a donor example. So this is the narrative of how someone might go from never heard of an organization before to engaging with that organization. So I will give everyone a couple minutes to just read this to themselves, unless folks would like me to read it out loud. All right. So in this example, you have, and of course, this is an idealized scenario, right? But I tried to build in as much reality as possible, because one of the key things that I'm sure all of you here know is that it takes multiple touches. You have to have contact with someone a lot before they really become invested in your organization. And so this is what a pathway to becoming a donor might look like. Finding out about the organization, getting more familiar with them, feeling like this organization is valuable, and then finally deciding that, you know what, I actually want to donate to this organization because it means a lot to me. And this is all mapped here. So how this applies: attract. Prospect sees a search result, then ads on social. Ads aren't necessarily a prerequisite. Maybe they see a search result, and then maybe because of their social circles or whatever, they start to see this organization suggested in their social feed, for example. There's a lot of different avenues, and there could be other ways that someone is involved at the attract stage. At the acquisition stage, this is where someone has, to go back to our example, Mario has seen this organization. They started to become interested. They've read a few things from their website. They think, I actually want to get more information on a regular basis. So they sign up for the newsletter. Then they're getting that newsletter on a regular basis. They're getting information that matters to them. Maybe they're finding out updates about the endometriosis, about research, maybe about advocacy opportunities, and they're really getting a lot of value from that content. And that is when they start to get messages asking them to donate, and they decide, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and donate. I'm gonna convert and become a donor. Now that they've done that, you want to keep them around. So it's important then at that stage to remind Mario that you really value them as a donor, and also to provide them with that same great quality content that brought them in and made them so engaged in the first place. And then you also want to cultivate them. You want to take that opportunity to get Mario to become more invested in the organization. So maybe after they've been a donor for a year or two, you start targeting them to increase their donation. So, or maybe they donated once and you want them to become a monthly donor. So that would be a cultivation activity then, trying to convince a donor who's donated once or twice to the organization to donate on a monthly basis. That is big picture what that journey along that pathway can look like. Thoughts, questions on this? Can you see how this might apply to your own work? Do you have concerns, perhaps about like, I don't know if this really fits me? Go ahead and speak up now.
I actually have kind of a weird question. This example, and I think at least in terms of our organization too, is similar, where potentially your clients could become donors. And I know we personally have a little internal moral dilemma with that. And so I'm just curious of like, I don't know, your input on that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's definitely something. So the agency that I work for, we work specifically with nonprofit clients around marketing and fundraising. And we actually have a fair number of clients in the healthcare services who do engage with their patients essentially as potential donors. Everybody approaches that differently. I think it requires a delicate touch. You can in the way that you approach it, but I definitely think that there are folks who utilize the service and they also want to give back because they gain value from it. You obviously, I think, have to be careful and sensitive in the way that you message those folks, which is why list segmentation becomes so important, because you may not want them to get the same type of broader blanket message that you might send out to other potential donors. You would want to have a message that's very specifically tailored to them, to, that they value your services, and that, if they're interested in, contributing to more folks having, being able to access those services, this is an opportunity to do that through donating something very specific, and obviously a lighter touch, right? You're not going to want to hit someone who is currently using your services with as heavy hitting a message as you would other types of prospects or current donors. So I definitely would say, in my opinion, it can be done, and it can be done well. You just want to be really intentional about the messaging.
Do you mind if I add something?
Oh, yes, please do.
Hi, Heather, this is Jordan. I just wanted to add, just in observing other health-focused organizations, I think you're obviously a great concern raised. And I track with everything that Elsa says. I also wanted to mention that oftentimes it maybe isn't an ask specific to donating, but for example, creating a peer-to-peer fundraiser to tell their story as patients and how they engaged with your foundation and your hospital. So there may be other more appropriate asks in addition to the direct, either passive or direct, donate ask. So just wanted to mention that as an option, on the platform.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Cool.
Does anyone else have thoughts on this, or perhaps work in a similar service-oriented organization where you have similar concerns, or maybe you have run campaigns that are specifically targeting folks that are already using your services? No? Okay. So the next thing that we'll be focusing on today is a small group discussion. So when I said that this is more like a traditional class and not a webinar, I really meant it. I'm going to make y'all do small group work. So the purpose of that is for multifold, right? I really believe that folks learn better when they aren't just having information thrown at them, but when they have an opportunity to engage. So throughout each of the classes, you'll find that small group discussion is built into this course. And I also really encourage folks to ask questions and, and talk and to have the discussion time, because that just opens up so many rich opportunities for learning. So with the small group discussion now, I'm going to break folks into rooms at random, and you'll have 15 minutes to discuss this topic. What are some challenges and opportunities for you and your organization when it comes to integrating digital fundraising into your larger fundraising strategy? And you will discuss this prompt together. And then I would like you to make sure that you have selected someone who can share that what you discussed, kind of key insights that you came to, or some problems that you surfaced that you think are big challenges, and bring that back to the whole class. So after everyone's had that time to discuss, that person who you have decided will be the spokesperson for your group will then have a minute to share back with the class. So each group will have a minute to share back. Does anyone have questions about this before we go into break rooms? Okay, we should all be back together now. And so this is when you will, whoever you chose will share back with the class kind of the high points of your discussion, anything that you think the rest of the class would benefit from hearing. I'm not sure how y'all prefer to do this.
I can go first.
Okay, perfect. Love a volunteer.
Well, we just, well, and actually, I actually know Tessa from where I used to have our office, but we were just really excited. We haven't really spent a lot of time learning about peer-to-peer fundraising. So I think that's a huge opportunity for all of us. And then making that shift from in-person events to online giving, and just that first piece of figuring out where donors and who wants to support us and where they live and what that looks like is a huge opportunity for us. I think we were all sort of tentative to talk about what we feel like we really need to learn, because we were like, oh, how far behind are we? And I think it's just nice to know that all four of us were kind of like, oh, okay, great. So we're all here to learn, and, not to be super feeling like embarrassed that we're all in different roles doing the same thing and we're all in the same, what am I trying to say? Like the playing field. We're like, here we are, we don't feel bad, but we can start together and feel like this is going to be a really good opportunity for us. So. And really the challenge is that we're small organizations and we all wear 17 different hats. And I'm sure everyone else feels the same way. So that's always like the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common experience. All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. And is it Sarah or Sarah?
Sarah.
Okay, great. Who would like to share next?
I'll go next.
Oh. All right, Julie.
Okay, thanks. I think similar to what Sarah said, most of us were from small organizations or organizations where we're the only person. And a few of us don't have any fundraising plan in our organization at all yet. So we're working on developing a fundraising plan. We'd like to increase our presence in the digital world. And also we're here to get formal direction on how to do that. Some of us don't really even know how to ask for money in the first place. And some of us also have struggled with our onboarding page or just donor relations in general. And I've found that like working through all these various programs like PayPal or Venmo or whatever it is can get a little hectic and things are always changing. You know, Amazon Smile was a thing and now it's not a thing, kind of that situation. So trying to more formalize our digital presence and just build our campaigns.
Yeah, thank you. Those are all, I think, concerns that probably and challenges a lot of folks face. And I'm sorry, I don't remember who, I didn't see who had said they
Hey,
wanted.
I'm Alexis.
Alexis.
It was me. Happy to jump on in. You know, I think one of the challenges is what you all have already shared, and I'm sure is very common to us. You know, we are small and we are passionate, and it's just us a lot of times. And you know, it was helpful to be able to share in a kind of peer-to-peer situation and setting, and have that solidarity. We are not alone in this trying to outreach to others. And we were kind of talking about CRMs and kind of different ways to utilize that a little bit. Once some of those things are off the plate, then it can be a little easier to free up time for other things like social media and digital and whatnot. So ours was just a lovely time of being able to connect and share some of the similarities that we have and the reality that we live in. So that is it.
Great. Thank you so much, Alexis. All right, who's next?
I can
Nicole.
go next.
I
Great.
see.
Well,
And whoever spoke after can go after you. Please go ahead.
okay, I'm going to skip anything that might have already been covered, like capacity and audience. But communicating, one of the things that we, as a group, all decided was sort of interesting for us to consider as we move forward is two things: communicating the needs when our projects are so wide-reaching and they're so diverse, like geographically and based on their needs. So communicating our needs and developing, excuse the kid noise in the background, but communicating the needs when our projects are really wide-reaching. And so that's a little bit organizational, but how do you do that when you have such a short time in the digital world to communicate that message and your needs? Also, we're doing so well with trying to engage on all of these digital platforms, you know, hey, here's what we're doing. We finally did get to communicate our needs, but then how do you move the needle forward into converting those people into owners? And that was something that we really all have a challenge with. And you know, like we got great Facebook messaging and presence and engagement, but then how do you convert those people into donors? Otherwise, same thing: staff capacity, audience.
Yeah, I think those are trying to get folks to convert is obviously the name of the the name of the game in so many ways. And there's a lot of creative different ways that folks have to go about that. Jason, I see your hand raised. Did you want to go next?
Yeah, because I think I jumped in line in front of somebody that you had already said, but sort of Nicole's message there about sort of the short time you have in the digital world. And it's also at the same time, you know, making sure that your message or your request or appeal isn't being buried amongst all kinds of other advertisements and appeals and GoFundMe's and because everybody's always asking. And so not only do you have a short time, but it can also get buried very quickly. So it's just, you know, attracting the attention at the right time with the right people. And then the next one that we had on a list that hadn't been talked about was just overall donor fatigue. How many times can you keep going back to the same folks and asking them over and over and over and over and over again? I know you gave us this already, but hey, it's been a couple months and we need more. And so it's managing that level of, or the frequency of touching your community to ask. You know, it's just about massaging that relationship. On our strengths, you know, we're a young and new group, and you know, I think several people have mentioned that, you know, we are kind of new to this and it is a new world, which means we're not really tied to old ways of thinking and old ways of doing it. And so there's a lot of potential creativity with this group on how we can sort of make changes and get our word out. So Yeah, so those are what hasn't been said already.
Great, thank you so much. And then I think next we have Sydney.
Perfect. I think just kind of like echoing what Jason just said is what we talked about a lot in our group, of just constantly asking people and not having, more people to ask. Like, yeah, we can send emails, a few times a year or once a month, but it's going really to the same email list that we have. And we can ask for more and more emails, but just not having those. And then also the donor fatigue of like, oh, we're going to ask you every single month for more money. And then I think we also talked about, specifically for my organization, we have a lot of older volunteers, and just trying to ask them via like emails is really difficult because they might get confused of like, oh, you just sent me an email, I must have not given money, I'm going to give more, or like, yeah, just having an older volunteer population is kind of what we spoke about as well. Also, so sorry, I share an office, so I don't know if you could hear me very well.
Oh, we can hear you fine, or at least I'm able to. But thank you. Let's see, Javier.
Yeah, I would also like to echo Jason. What I've been noticing is like oftentimes we ended up like visiting the same donors, and that probably will have like a limit. And then we have been like reaching out different communities, like the Rotary clubs and stuff like that. But sometimes it's really hard to convert them and to really show them what's the importance of the project, which is totally crucial. And also we have like platforms like GoFundMe and stuff like that. We're on those type of platforms, and we get some donations time to time, but is hard to keep like a frequency of donations, you know what I mean? But when we, I don't know, appear like in the news or something like that, like donations just like skyrocket, and they get like amazing. But then like after that pass, like we go low again. So it's like having that frequency, I will say, and converting like potential people into donors, and how to reach different communities, or find donations even in different states if that's possible, or anything. So
Great, thank you so much, Javier. Those are all challenges that I've heard from clients in the past, and that I'm sure also felt by others here as well. Next up is Lorena. Am I pronouncing that right?
So a little bit that we talked about has already been said, but one of the major things that we kept hitting on just the challenges was the time and the help, especially because a lot of us are small organizations. So trying to find the time to keep running the programs like normal, and then try to find time to like, hey, let's send out an email because we need funds or we need new donations. Also, another challenge that that we shared in our group was communications within groups of the organization is getting development, talking to communications, or the just being able to get to it. Another challenge was how to get subscribers to actually click through the items. So we did have an organization that was a lot larger in our group. So by the time they send out the newsletter and it gets to their portion, it's like, how do you get someone to click through it after they already went through all the other different groups in your organization for them to click on yours? But we did talk about some opportunities, and one of them was having a more passive approach if you already have the subscribers, and trying to senior them into being lifetime donors. Also, another one was getting better to do the peer-to-peer digital. It would be a lot more helpful to have to be able to work with other similar organizations to get more people involved, or even to just blast out so people know that you're there, especially small organizations.
Thanks, Lorena. Let's see. Next up is Dylan.
There we go. Hi. So a lot of our group stuff was what has everybody's already said. So that's actually very comforting to know that we're all in the same boat, whether or not we're floating or not, we will find out. But one thing we talked about is bandwidth of our organizations and the number of people that are trying to do the same thing. So finding a way to be very effective with our time, because there's just not very many of us. The other thing we talked about was different types of platforms and balancing the effectiveness with the cost of the platforms, because if we're using all these different services, they each have their own price. So trying to make sure that we have the correct ones. And then growing our base of donors, so we're not asking the same people for money all the time. That's important. So we kind of have a broader reach. But other than that, we talked about a lot of the same things. We're all in the same boat.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing back. And then the final person to share back will be Heather.
Sorry, unmute. Okay, again, we echoed everybody's thoughts, so no point in repeating. I guess the only kind of different things were, from our opinion, is like there's more than enough money in this world to support all of these amazing organizations and then some, and adequately funded, but we always feel like we're forced to be competitive with each other, which I think is a terrible thing. You know, we could probably all do a lot better elsewhere, but that's just the ways of the world. And how do we change that? How do you set yourself apart? How do you get people to actually read the emails, etc.? We also talked a little bit about like different challenges depending on who the donor is. You have younger generations, older generations. What do people actually want to see? What do they want to hear from you? What platform do they want to use? What else? Oh, we actually mentioned that sometimes now we delete all our emails, but if you get an interesting piece of mail in the mail, you might actually look at it more so than you would your email these days, which is kind of counterintuitive. And then just the whole thing we kind of talked about before of like feeling bad using clients for marketing purposes, and then also feeling bad if their story isn't, you know, dramatic enough to grasp people's attention, which is just kind of sucks in general. So, but awesome. Thank you for the opportunity to all commiserate with each other. We appreciated that too.
Good. I'm glad y'all found that cathartic. Let's see. Oh, someone is asking, Athena, what is peer-to-peer digital fundraising? So peer-to-peer digital fundraising is like the formal name for having people create a fundraiser and asking other people to donate to it. So you might see these on Facebook, or you may have a platform that allows you to create them. So like, for example, let's say that I was really passionate about my local animal shelter, and they had an option for me to create my own fundraising page. And then I could use that page to personally solicit people to donate through the fundraising page that I set up. That's an example of peer-to-peer fundraising. Does that answer your question, Athena, or do you have a follow-up? All right, it looks like that is answered, unless, let's see. Oh, why is Q&A being weird? Okay, sorry, y'all. Zoom. There's a lot of different options in this platform. Okay, next up is reviewing some of the key elements of digital fundraising strategy before going into y'all having time to actually start working on your own strategic plans. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and also mute everyone, but please feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself if you have a question as I'm speaking. Okay, so digital fundraising plan. So I'm going to show you quickly what the example plan looks like, and then I'm going to kind of go into some of the things that I think are really critical to putting together a successful plan. And I was, I guess, pleased isn't maybe quite the right word, but gratified that some of the things that I thought were challenges to overcome, I'm hearing those at, you know, in the discussions that y'all are having. So I think we're aligned on some of the common challenges that we face when it comes to fundraising. Okay, so this is an example strategic plan, and this is just an example. What I mean by that is you don't need to religiously follow the structure of this. This is just so that you have a reference point if you haven't created a plan before, so you have a sense of like what you might want to put together. So you have, we like to put an overview in our plans. And since we're usually preparing these for clients, this is a anonymized plan that we provided to a client. We usually have a brief overview of what the plan entails and the goal of the plan. And then the first thing that we do is we outline the key fundraising goals that are associated with the plan. And since this is a larger plan, like this is not just a campaign plan, this is like your overarching strategy. This is all divided up into different sections. So this is awareness, and we identify the key objective for the awareness stage of work along the donor pathway. And then we put key recommendations here. You may want to, instead of having recommendations in your plan, you may want to have a list of the key activities or actions that you want to take, for example, might be useful to you. And then we always identify key performance indicators, which is just a fancy way of saying, how do we know that this is working? How do we know that we're on track with our goals? So it's a way of keeping up with and understanding your progress. And so then that you can go and tweak things or fix things or, drop something that's not working, but that you have consistency in how you're evaluating the work that you're doing. And there's the same process is followed for each of the points along the pathway: acquisition, cultivation, etc. And then we also include in our plan, so there's a lot of detail in here, a very brief annual content calendar. And this is usually what you would use to then build out a more detailed content calendar if you have the capacity to do that. And we usually build those out in, like, say, an Excel sheet where you've got all of your activities laid out in more detail for each month. But this is an abbreviated version of that, where you're calling out the most important things that you'll be doing, typically like the main messages that you would want to be sending, or types of communication that you want to be engaged in, or major campaigns that will be happening within each month, so that you have a sense of what's happening, and that's like fully attached to your plan. And then you've got your year planned out, and you can execute with a little less stress, hopefully. All right. That is a strategic plan in a nutshell. And I'm going to get into sort of the nuts and bolts of what to consider as you're putting together a strategic plan and some of the more detailed considerations. But before I move into that, does anyone have any questions so far?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
With these strategic plans, something I heard in our group discussions was just the idea of collaboration within a nonprofit. So who's actually approving, who's got eyes on this, who's executing? Do you have any tips or tricks on that portion of organizing and making sure everything gets executed within an organization?
I do. And that's actually kind of in what I want to get into next. So if it's okay with you, Jordan, I'm going to answer that question.
Yeah, let's do it.
Through some of the next steps that I would recommend, because that's definitely a big consideration. All right, so here we are, taking action. So the first thing that I think is really crucial for everyone when you're trying to figure out your plan is to decide what your goals are and what your focus needs to be. You want it to align with your organization's purpose, and you want to also make sure that you understand how you're measuring the impact. And I really want to emphasize the goal and focus, because I think one of the things that becomes really overwhelming as you're trying to develop a strong fundraising strategy for the first time, or even if you've been developing fundraising strategies for years, is it can get messy really fast because you might have many, many goals. And so thinking about what level of goal and organizing and uniting around one central goal or like objective for your fundraising program is really important. So then you can always make sure that any activity relates back to that. And so it can help you avoid ending up getting too busy with too many different commitments and fundraising efforts. The next thing that's really important when you're considering a plan, and you didn't see this in the example plan because we often do our audience development work as a whole separate thing for clients. So that's not in the strategic plan, but I would recommend making sure that you have this in your strategic plan or somewhere, is an outline of who your audience is. You need to understand who you're talking to, where they're at, and what motivates them. And also the sort of subsegments of your audience. What do your current donors look like, broadly speaking? Who are your prospective donors? And maybe there's a couple subsegments of those prospective donors. You having that understanding is going to allow you to create more tailored messaging. And also then you can use that information to segment out your list so that when you do run fundraising campaigns, you're not sending out the same message and the same cadence to everyone all at once. You're really tailoring it based on your knowledge of that person and what their interests are, what their needs are, and what their status is. The next thing that I think is really important to emphasize is content. At the end of the day, when you're talking about digital fundraising, it's all about content. What are you putting in front of people's eyes? Is it compelling? Does it speak to them? Is it consistent? What I think about a lot, especially when I'm thinking about nonprofits and how strapped for time and resources y'all always are. I often say we because I just worked in nonprofit for so long, but I don't anymore. So I'm so I'm trying to break myself of that habit a little bit. But is quality over quantity. Having really good content that is valuable and interesting and speaks to the needs of the person that is getting it is far more important and will do a lot more for you than having a Facebook post every day. There is a lot of appeal to making sure that you're pumping out content all the time, but I have found over the years that that's not the strongest approach. Having something that people find useful and valuable is really more worthwhile. Even if it takes a little bit more time to create, you'll see a higher return from it. It's worth the investment to create content that is really high quality. And the other thing that's great about creating high quality content is you can repurpose that content in a variety of ways. And I'll get into that hopefully a little later if time allows, but like broadly speaking, when I say repurposing, let's say you've got a really great article that is, I'm going to go back to the endometriosis example that we were using earlier. So you've got a really great piece of content about the impact of endometriosis on someone's life. And it's got really great information, both from like the story perspective, a strong personal narrative, but there's also a lot of heavy hitting statistics and research about that impact on a population level. You can repurpose that content by extracting out those facts and making a series of graphics that are about facts and building a mini campaign around that. You can extract pieces of someone's story and share elements of that story on a variety of platforms. So when I say repurposing, that's what I'm talking about. How can you slice and dice your content to just maximize its potential and what it can do for you versus trying to create something all new every single time? All right, next is timing. And I already heard y'all talking about this in your discussion, but timing is truly everything. And I mean that both in the sense of how you're talking to donors when you're talking to them, but also about your own planning. You want to have a set of a cadence that works for you. I can't remember who it was that brought up the example of having 2 fundraising events that were really close together, like just a few months apart. But that timing isn't great for multiple reasons. It's not great for your donors, forgive me, I can't remember who on this call you shared this example, but it's not great for donors, right? Because they're fatigued from being hit up within a few months time span. And it's also not great for you as staff because you come off of one, major a campaign or event, and you're already trying to like throw yourself into planning for another one. And you're probably not able to give it your all and do as good a job as you might want to do. So having a cadence that is going to set you up for success is really critical. And then thinking about this on the donor side, it helps to break out the types of communication. So what does that ongoing engagement look like? And these are things that are not donor asked. These are pieces of content or ways that you are engaging with folks that are about reminding them of their value and of your value. Maybe it's informational, maybe it's opportunities for them to attend an event or advocate or volunteer or what have you, things that are separate from donating, but keep someone really engaged with your organization. And then there's those tentpole moments like Colorado Gives Day. Those are those big campaigns where you really want to put a lot of energy and time and focus to both cultivate your current donors to get them to donate at a higher level, and also bring in new donors that are going to be those first-time donors. And then sprinkled in there, you're going to have your mini campaigns. And these are smaller efforts that you might run that may not have a hard ask, but may have a soft ask embedded in them that it's going to serve a dual purpose of both engagement as well as hopefully converting some people to becoming donors in those, I guess, the downswing times that you have between those big campaigns. All right, and next up, and this is something that we are going to get into in more detail in our next lesson, which is really going to be focused around analytics and metrics and things like that, is tracking what matters. You want to identify what is really going to be most useful to you to actually measure, and not collect and analyze all the data that you can just because you can do that for a lot of reasons. One, data without purpose is not very useful. And two, you have time constraints. You cannot look at and analyze every single metric and data point that exists. So you want to make sure that you are focusing on the things that are going to really help you to make better decisions and to make improvements as you go along. And we'll be providing you with resources and guidance on what we've seen are typically critical metrics to pay attention to for each of those points along that donor pathway. So that like attract, acquire, nurture, et cetera. And finally, maximize your time and drive impact. And this really goes back to figuring out your resources. You want to determine what your real capacity is, because you can't execute when you don't have capacity. So being really realistic about that is important for setting yourself up for success. In a similar vein, don't try to be everywhere at once. You'll hear me talk in this class about an omni-channel approach or a multi-channel approach. And that doesn't mean that you need to be on every platform. What that really means is that the platforms and spaces that you are in, you want to have a message that's seamlessly and appropriately shared across all the places that you do exist on. Not that you need to be on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, et cetera. Find the platforms that really work for you and focus your energy there. Don't spread yourself too thin and try and be everywhere all at once. The other key point that I liked that I think is really critical is leveraging everyone from their seat. And this really goes back to, Jordan, the point that you raised around figuring out how to connect with all of the folks that are in your organization. So bringing along and talking with both your comms folks and your programmatic folks, and thinking through collaboratively how fundraising fits in to all aspects of the organization, and how you can both use one another to really maximize the resources that you have. So how can you leverage programming to build compelling stories? And how do you help programming see the utility of that, and also not place more of a burden on folks who are already probably strapped for time as it is? And part of that is just opening the door to some conversations that are focused and bringing to the table what it is that you want in a clear, in a clear way. But it's really about making sure that you're having those conversations in a focused manner. Then next is asking yourself, how can I use what already exists? And what I mean is, rather than trying to create all new things, look and see what you already have. Now, that's not going to work for everybody, but I think that most of you probably have some resources that you may not even be considering. If you are, if you're an organization that's running a lot of different programming, those are fundraising resources right there already in the story. There's the stories that you already have that you can tell. So when I say use what already exists, sometimes what I mean is take what you already have and use it in a different way. And then again, emphasizing quality over quantity. Do something really, really well, be that content or an event or a campaign, versus trying to fundraise 365. And then you want to start creating your plan. You decide on your goals, what you want to measure, the key things that you want to accomplish to bring those goals to fruition, and make sure that you've identified a way to track your progress so that you understand how you are meeting on target to meet your goals. When you're creating your plan, keep it clear, keep it focused. Don't put so much detail that you get lost in it. Make sure that you've identified what is most important to accomplish, both in terms of your overall fundraising program, but also at each of those stages of the donor pathway. So what do you really want to accomplish when you are trying to attract new folks into your organization? What is it that you really want to accomplish when you're converting people? And beyond, I want more donors, do you have a more specific goal? And it's fine to start broad and then get more specific over time, but the more meaningful you can make your objective, the easier it's going to be to actually measure and understand how well you're doing. And then you're going to want to map that against the nonprofit marketing funnel, aka the donor pathway. And the key takeaways here then are to not devote time to something if you know you're not going to be able to follow through with it. So that's basically, don't bite off more than you can chew. What's sustainable will pay off in the long run. And again, this kind of goes back to plan based on the resources that you have, on your capacity, on your staff's capacity. What can you actually do that's not going to burn you out, that you can replicate and continue moving forward? Stay focused on the goal. Don't get distracted by a lot of mini goals or other concerns. Remind yourself of what your main objective is. Leverage the power of your whole team to accomplish your goal, and invest in understanding your audience and how your digital fundraising efforts are performing. And because you're part of this cohort, you'll be able to make use of Mighty Cause, which is going to really be helpful in your ability to understand the performance of your fundraising efforts, because they have a great dashboard. You can get easy access to those metrics to have at your fingertips understanding of how a campaign is performing. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. There was a bunch of other stuff that I wanted to get into, but there is not enough time to both do that and also allow you time to work on your strategic plans in class. Does anyone have questions, thoughts that you would like to share before I break you off into small groups to work on your outlines for the next 30 to 20 minutes? All right.
So,
Now,
so just to reiterate, the goal for this breakout session will be to be in small groups, look through the example document that you've shared and start crafting our own while helping each other out with ideas. Is that right?
that is exactly right. And yes, Lori, I'm going to share the link to this support materials folder again, and all of the materials that I shared are going to be in there. And I'll just share a link directly to lesson 1 support materials so that it's easy for you to get to. There you go. If you go into that folder, you can download all of these materials. You can use the strategic plan outline as your base if you want. And when it comes to approaching the outline, you may not be ready to like fill out an outline yet. You may still be in the talking through what your goals are stage, or like figuring out your resource capacity. That's fine. I want you to use this time in a way that feels most useful to you as you are to develop your plan. And the reason that I'm putting y'all together again in small groups is so that you can use each other as a sounding board and a resource as you start to think about planning.
Will we be coming back together again, or is it just breaking out?
Yes, yeah, I'll bring you back together. I won't just leave you hanging. I will, let's see. So it's 10:35 your time. Is that right? I'm an hour. I'm in central time. So I'm like trying to mentally, but I'll just do this in increments.
Yeah, it's
You're going to
10:30.
have about 20 minutes to work on this. And then I will bring folks back into the room and sort of answer any questions, and then go ahead and close out this lesson. And then I'll be available for office hours tomorrow. And of course, if you have questions immediately following this, you can shoot me or Jordan an email, and I'll follow up with you by tomorrow with any questions that you have. How does that sound? Any other questions?
I think that sounds great. Maybe just some direction on duplicating the Word document so we're not editing the original.
Yes. So you'll see the example strategic plan outline, and I'm just going to bring this over so you can actually see it. This right here. Please do not actually edit this document. Download it and then do whatever you want to your heart's content. But this needs to stay the outline that everyone can access. So don't actually go in and like directly edit this file. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, perfect. And all right, I'm going to break everybody out again. Okay, everyone is back. And before I do any more talking, I was in a breakout room with Maklina. Is that how you pronounce your name?
That's right.
Okay, could you go ahead and repeat your question?
The question was like, we have like the system whereby we have our database donors that we always reach for our yearly appeal. And then we have the Facebook that we always also reach our supporters there through Colorado Gifts. And I've been working on developing a strategic plan to send out to foundations. And then looking at what we have here in class now, it just made me think like, which one should I focus on? Because the format here a bit is looking different from the format that I started working on. And I'm like torn in between. I'm like, where should I focus and how it should be, I should tackle this or come up with the strategic plan. Do I come with a different strategic plan geared towards what is here, or should I continue with what I've started working on?
So the reason I wanted to repeat your question is because it's a great question. And I think it's one that's going to come up, because when we talk about strategic plans, that can mean all kinds of things. And so what you're talking about is a strategic plan that's specific to a specific like donor, like donor base and donor focus. And so it would fall under, it would be separate from like a more overarching strategic fundraising plan. So you would use the strategic fundraising plan that we're developing right now together as a reference and to help inform the plan that you're talking about working on. So it's like there's like an umbrella plan kind of, and then there is what you want to do, but beneath that. So like you have like, let's say like you have a programming department, right? And then you have like specific programs. It's a similar concept. You have a fundraising plan, and then underneath that, you might have plans that are specific to different initiatives that you're undertaking.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely. And I also saw that y'all had some like really great questions that you wanted more details around the outline. I'm going to go in later during the week and actually add in as comments responses to those. And so if you reference back later in the week, you'll see responses from me around that. Let's see. Okay, next up, and I know we're already out of time, so I'm going to try and like speed through this really fast. We are going to meet next month, and the focus is going to be around data fundamentals, and you will also have time in class to work on your plan. So, and you'll have also additional resources. So some of the things that you saw in the outline, there'll be additional resources for you to use, like specifically around key performance indicators and metrics. That is all going to be a topic that we get into in lesson 2, and there'll be additional resources with recommended key performance indicators and metrics for each one of these areas of the outline. And you'll have those resources available to you, and also time in class to continue working on that aspect of the plan. So what I would recommend you doing in between that is really focusing on key activities that you think are important to focus on, what your goals are, things of that nature. And again, as questions arise, shoot me an email, come to office hours. I'm happy to have more extended discussions one-on-one. Strategic plan with language for the audience section. I will see what I can find, Katie, around some examples with the audience. Okay, is there anything else that folks need questions answered on before we go ahead and wrap up today? Nope. Okay. Thank you all for attending this first class. I'm so excited to be with you for the next year, and for the duration of this course in particular. So good luck. And again, please reach out with any follow-up questions that you have.